Hello everybody, welcome to my top 10 games of 2017. Emphasis on the my because these are going to be games that I choose based on the experiences I had. There are some of these games that are amazing, maybe even got very high on Game of the Year, that I just personally did not have a very good experience with for one reason or another. And I just want to let you know this is my opinion, strictly opinion. I'm not saying the games at the top are the best and the ones at the bottom are the worst. I'm just saying how they are in that relation to me. And lastly, remember that I haven't played every single game that's come out this year. There's many that I wanted to play, such as Metroid Samus Returns and of course, Skyrim, but I just haven't had the funds or the time. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 10. Number 10 for me is going to be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. By far the most impactful game to come out this year, as shown by it winning the Game Awards of 2017. Being the first release for the Switch really brought a wind of change into Nintendo as a company and really like gaming as a whole for this year. It brought hope that all of these new releases that Nintendo had announced this year were going to be great. It basically kick-started the year for us. It came out really early in the year and was the only large release in the first quarter. All that being said, there were some very specific problems with it for me specifically. That's not to say I didn't enjoy this game, but it's just lower than the rest on the list. First things first was the motion controls. Now I realize the motion controls for aiming and stuff isn't really required, but while I was playing this game, I was basically on leave from my work because I had sprained my hand or wrist or something. I still really don't know what it was, but basically, I couldn't turn my wrist at all without feeling pain. Luckily for me, it was at the perfect position to play on the Switch because I didn't have to turn my wrist to do that. It was in line with my arm, so I guess it didn't hurt. I don't know. But when I got to a couple of the shrines in the game require you to use motion controls. These ball in the maze roll goal type games really messed up my hand and I was in like pain trying to get through them, which is a shame because one of the shrines is actually very, very crucial to the entire game. So I kinda had to do it to move on, and it was very early game as well, so I was experiencing this at the beginning of the game, kind of souring my experience for the rest of it. All in all though, the game was really enjoyable and it really just left me wanting more, and so I'm just left to wait for the DLC, which was Master Mode, and kind of the exploration of the side guardians that we had known, but it just didn't give us enough even with the DLC. I feel like there's just huge chunks of the lore missing for me, and by the end of the game I was kind of like, huh, that's it. Okay. It's a fun game, it's just the lore kind of messed it up for me, and of course the whole motion control thing. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's go to the next one. Number 9. Fire Emblem Warriors. Oh my god, I just heard every Fire Emblem fan say. Why Fire Emblem Warriors of all the Fire Emblem games that have come out this year? Because, if you didn't know, Fire Emblem Warriors is kind of a controversial game within the fandom because it kind of only appeals to the two newest games and what we know in America as Shadow Dragon, which is the game that Marth is in. And that's not really a problem for me because the only games I've happened to play were Awakening, Fates, and Shadow Dragon. So literally I know every single character in the game and there's no characters in the game I don't know. So it's kind of a pretty good deal for me, so that wasn't a problem for me. In addition to that, a lot of people always say that the Warriors games are just really grindy and the entire game is kind of the same stuff. Thing is, I love that. I love impossible goals to meet in a grind in a game. Hyrule Warriors had the huge adventure map that practically no one finished because it's so huge. Even the completionist didn't complete it because there were like 10 DLC maps that were the exact same size as the original, so it was hard. It's kind of the same deal with this game. It has multiple maps that all have several fights in it that would really just take you hundreds of hours of playtime to get through. But I enjoy that. I usually find myself going back to this game in between other games that you'll see on the list because it's just a fun thing to keep grinding when all the other games are already completed. Anyway, it's kind of just my go-to game whenever I'm bored. It's low effort and it's fun. On to the next game. Number 8. Destiny 2. Oh my god. Okay, so, to put this out here, I never played Destiny 1. This was partly because I didn't have a PlayStation 4 at the time, and Destiny 2 I was able to get on PC, so I was like, you know what? Good deal. I've actually been craving a player versus environment game in first-person shooting for a long time, ever since Overwatch came out and started giving like these little player versus environment events, where it just gave me a taste of what I really wanted, but I didn't really get it. Destiny 2 was announced, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I'll wait for it to get a discount. A month after it comes out, gets a discount, I bought it. And I absolutely loved the game when I got it. It was amazing in pretty much every way to me. And I realized it was a very controversial game, but I understand that this is really from the more hardcore players that are complaining that it doesn't have a large end game, and that's because it's kind of meant to be an MMO FPS of sorts, so it's supposed to have like an endless game. It's not supposed to end, but it ended for a lot of people once they got to the maximum power of 310? I think 315 maybe, I don't really know. I think it actually was 305, and then they updated it and now it's like 330. I'm not really sure. Thing is, I never got to that point. I never got to this end of the end game, and I'm not really familiar with the concept of an MMO. I haven't played any MMOs really, so I didn't understand why people were complaining about there not being a lot of endgame, when obviously there was a lot of endgame compared to the games that I usually play. Destiny 2 is unlike anything I've ever played, so I was just like, this game's fine, I don't see anything wrong with it, but I do get players' complaints with it. I just don't have any of those complaints. While playing through the game, I saw these fantastic sights that were really just building up to me wanting to play Xenoblade 2, because, of course, we're all looking forward to that game because of the sights, in addition to the gameplay. The worlds were beautiful, the soundtracks are great, the cooperation within fire teams is awesome, I enjoyed that a lot, and the game is just all around fun to play, and it's something I had never experienced before. If I had played Destiny 1 and I had played this game after Destiny 1, I probably wouldn't have played it that much, because I kind of just picked up Destiny 2 for 2 weeks and then put it down because I'd kind of done everything in the game, so I was done with it. All in all, it kind of just gave me that player versus environment that I wanted. Number 7. The Crash Insane Trilogy. Now I'm gonna go out and say, out of the gate, I haven't played the Crash Insane Trilogy, but from what I've seen, it's basically a faithful recreation of the first 3 games, all of which I have played and enjoy extensively. It's a huge part of my childhood, and just the sheer impact that this game had coming out, no one expected it, first off. Second off, everyone loves Crash Bandicoot. Everyone's been wanting the old Crash Bandicoot for forever. And I really feel like the Crash Insane Trilogy caused a chain reaction of old games getting re-released, such as Parappa the Rappa. It's like developers suddenly realized, people still want this. That's kind of what the Insane Trilogy represents, is that companies are listening to the fan base, and this remake just shows that we still want what we liked back then. Of course, since I haven't played it myself, there could be some huge problem with the game that I wouldn't even know about, but from what I've heard, it's a perfectly faithful recreation and an impactful game for 2017. Number 6. A Hat in Time. I've been following the development of A Hat in Time for at least a year. I wouldn't even know. I've been following the development team on Twitter for a while and just checking out their updates, waiting for the game to release. The moment it released, I was all over it. At this point, Super Mario Odyssey hadn't came out, so I was really craving a modern 3D platforming game. It's all we had back then. Imagine that. A world without Odyssey, but with A Hat in Time? Like, we don't have that anymore, but A Hat in Time, I believe at the few months it had to itself, was dominating 3D platforming. Of course, we had Yooka-Laylee earlier in the year, but that was a very controversial game. A Hat in Time, however, I haven't really seen any complaints, and as I've played through the entire game, I enjoyed it immensely. It really captured that GameCube era feel of platforming, like in Sunshine, but it also had like a Wind Waker feel of environment. It just emerged a lot of the early 2000 feels I get from a lot of the games on the GameCube. It would have made higher in my list, honestly, if Mario Odyssey had not came out the same year, because it really just scratched the itch I needed for a 3D platformer until Odyssey came out, which is kind of bad timing and a shame. I feel like the game would have thrived a lot more if everyone wasn't just waiting for Odyssey. Number 5. Persona 5. Now, once again, I'm going to go out and say, I personally have not played this game. I have watched the Let's Plays, I have watched streams, and I've been so enthralled with the story and the presentation of the game. It's one of those games that really itches a spot for aesthetic that I always want in games. One of my two big things in games is always, number 1, music, which Persona always knocks out of the ballpark, and number 2, presentation, which the UI in Persona 5 hasn't really been matched to anything since, and it's a nice change from the minimalist graphics that a lot of games tend to be going for. I'm looking at Mario Party 10 specifically, after such a downgrade from Mario Party 9's main menu. In addition to presentation and music, the gameplay is of course amazing, as is the story of the game. Every Persona game pulls me in one way or another, though Persona 5 is special in the fact that it gives a real enemy to look forward to. Persona 3 really just had random shadows popping up. Persona 4 for half the game was just, there's a weird thing in the TV, what do we do about it? Persona 5 is solving real world problems where you actually tend to hate the bosses for doing these terrible things. Whereas previously it's just these nasty shadow guys that we have to get rid of for some reason. And to be honest, any game that makes me cry deserves a high spot on this list. Number 4. Xenoblade 2. Or should I say Xenoblade with the way they started pronouncing it nowadays. I only bought this game about a week ago and I've only poured in about 30 hours, as if that's not much for a week, and already I have to put this game this high up. Mainly for the fact that I've barely been able to pull myself away from it while I've been playing, which I can't really say for any other of the games here. The music is of course awesome, the scenery is of course awesome, and the gameplay is, in my opinion, an improvement from both Xenoblade and Xenoblade X. Of course I haven't gotten to the end game, so I don't believe I've even gotten to the parts where the story just gets really, really good. And that's actually where I would put the main downside of the game for me, is that the story hasn't been as engaging as Xenoblade 1 for me. Xenoblade X of course doesn't hold a candle to either 1 or 2, but Xenoblade 2 is a little lacking in story, which, lucky for me, not a very important factor in whether I determine if a game is good or not. I really worry more about me walking around in scenery. Xenoblade 2 being a very large game just takes a lot of walking, and if you can enjoy the scenery and music during that, that's a huge plus. And that's what keeps me coming back to the game. It's just a game where I can chill while doing side missions and enjoying what's all around me. Number 3. This one's going to have to go to Overwatch, and I know that might be a little weird. Overwatch technically came out in 2016, and that's not even technically. It actually did come out in 2016. I'm gonna put it on this list because it's a game that, first off, I've been playing a lot this year, and second off, is still getting continuous updates. I'd say more of the bigger updates have been this year as opposed to last year. When I first saw Overwatch, it's what first pulled me into the genre of shooters. I'm not counting Splatoon here because that's not really an actual shooter. Before, no shooter has ever pulled me in. I've never stuck to Call of Duty. I played that maybe once or twice when I was like 12. Halo has never been appealing to me, but Overwatch just had this colorful feel that reminds me a lot of TF2, which is the only other shooter that I've played up to the point that I got Overwatch. This was before Destiny 2 came out, remember? And throughout the almost 2 years now it's been out, I've been playing it consistently. For every season of competitive, I've ranked on every single one of them and played at least 40 or so matches, with some of my highest getting up to like 150 matches in a season, which is about 3 months for those who don't know. My playtime on this game is somewhere around 500 hours at this point, which I believe makes it my most played game ever, topping Plants vs. Zombies at like 200 or 200 and something. I think a Pokemon game might actually be at 300 hours, I'm not entirely sure. But I do know that Overwatch is my most played game of all time. And the reason it strikes so highly at this list is every time I complete one of the previous games. A Hat in Time, Fire Emblem, well I guess I haven't finished Fire Emblem Warriors, Breath of the Wild. I go back to Overwatch. I come back to it again and again after playing these huge AAA games that astound me. And then I go back to Overwatch because it still doesn't disappoint me time after time that I go back to it. And it's really like a burst kind of thing. I don't continuously play Overwatch like once every day. I'll play it 50 times in a week and then for the next month not play it at all because I'm distracted with some other game, but eventually I do always go back to Overwatch. It's one of my big time wasters, and overall I'd say probably my top 3 games of all time, not just 2017. Number 2. Super Mario Odyssey. We all saw this coming. It was going to be in the top 3 and y'all knew it. Of course I haven't technically 100%ed the game yet, because of course I'm still doing a Let's Play of it, but if I wasn't doing a Let's Play of it, you'd know it'd be finished 5 times over. And honestly, I have about 600 something moons at this point. I've probably played more than the average player. So I can say, this game has astounded me in every way, continuously amazed me as I worked my way through the game, doing things I previously thought impossible for any mainline Mario game to do. And bringing this back to the list, it made me cry. There's not even any real emotional moments in the game. Once you get to the festival in the game, I cried. Even listening to Jump Up Superstar, which is the music they played in the first trailer. That makes me cry consistently, listening to that song in the car, at home, anytime. No other game has been able to make me cry in a trailer. You all know how much I like Mario 64. Mario Odyssey really is just a modern culmination of Mario 64. At least to me it is. It's literally what I've been wanting out of a Mario game for the last decade at least. The music is all amazing and wonderful. The worlds are all surprising and new for Mario games. You don't just have generic grassland, generic water level, generic deserts. All of these levels have culture. Literal culture. There's people living in all these levels. It's amazing. It rivals World of Warcraft in its world building. Well, maybe not, but to me, it still beats it out. And really, I don't think the festival is going to be the last thing that makes me cry, because once I 100% this game, I will be crying because I will know it's over. Except it's not, because it's such a good game that I'm probably going to come back to it a couple dozen times. Number 1. So after Super Mario Odyssey, what do you think could possibly beat that out for me? Well, it might be a little surprising. Splatoon 2. I did say Overwatch is probably my favorite shooter, but to be honest, I don't consider Splatoon 2 to be a shooter. This is of course coming off the heels of Splatoon 1, which I might like the same as Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2, of course, as you've known, I've had an itch for player versus environment. That was also gotten by Splatoon 2 because it had Salmon Run. That was a huge actual selling point for me, as odd as it is, and as small as it is in the game. So that was really my first push to buy it, but after I bought it, I find myself consistently going back to competitive to try and get myself inched up higher. In Splatoon 1, I was really only able to tickle the neck of S rank, when S Plus was there as a goal for me the whole time. In this game, Splatoon 2, I've put in so much time into the game, I'm not sure, I think probably 120 hours at this point. I'd have to check my Switch, but it's probably somewhere around there. I have reached S Plus rank in every single ranked mode, except for Clam Rush, because we're getting there. Or is it Clam Blitz? It's new. Don't blame me for this. I've reached S Plus rank in all of these, and to my amazement, the ranks go even higher because you have S Plus 0, S Plus 1, S Plus 2, so on and so on. I think it limits at 50 or something, but that of course gives me even more drive to go. I've always thought if I was ever going to get into an esports, it would be Splatoon 2, because it's the game that's honestly easiest to understand, and I'm good at it for some reason. I don't really know why. Like, obviously I've put a lot more hours into Overwatch, but I'm really good at Splatoon 2, and of course me being competitive makes the game more fun for me. It's kind of in a similar spot as Overwatch for me, because once again, it's a game that I always come back to after I play these huge games. I knock them out one after the other, and then I just keep coming back to Splatoon 2, similar to Overwatch. In fact, I almost play them simultaneously. Like, I swap off, like, today's a Splatoon 2 day, today's an Overwatch day. It's also really inspiring when it's such a new IP. Coming from Nintendo, where almost every big AAA game is from a series 25 years old, it's surprising a game from them that's so new caught my attention so much. And even after Splatoon 1 came out and then they released codenamed Steam, I was interested in it because it was once again a new IP from Nintendo. It didn't even compare to how good Splatoon 1 was. So it almost feels like it's fleeting in the way that it's the only new IP that Nintendo will have that's going to flourish and end up eventually one day being a 25-year-old IP that continuously gets games. That's what gets me excited. This is a game that's going to keep expanding for years to come, and it's already so great. Even Splatoon 2 has added in so many new things, such as Salmon Run, a new ranked mode, several new types of weapons, and it's amazing looking forward to the future and seeing more and more things getting added. And that's, I guess, what probably inches it out above Odyssey for me, is I can look forward to new things for it. While Odyssey might have DLC, I don't know, everything for Splatoon 2 is completely free. I don't have to worry about having to shell out more money to enjoy Splatoon 2 even more, which a lot of the other games in this list don't really have under their belt. So I guess Splatoon 2 is this game of the year for me, but it's also probably gonna be the game of the year for me for 2018, maybe 2019, I don't know. The game already has confirmed 2 years of continuous updates, so I have plenty of more to look forward to in Splatoon 2. And it's really the future that keeps me coming back today, as odd as that may sound. That was a good line. I'm gonna use that again sometime. Anyway, there you go. There's my top 10. Once again, this is simply my own opinion and my own experiences, which is why Breath of the Wild is so low. It caused me such immense pain. I just couldn't put it higher. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to keep apologizing for that for the next year until I make my next top 10, which Zelda will also disappoint in. See you all in the next episode, and goodbye. And here's some of the honorable mentions. Puyo Puyo Tetris. I was excited when it came out, but it didn't build up to the esports scene that I wanted out of it when it came out in the West. Cuphead. A beautiful game that I'm excited came out, but I've not got around to playing it, and I really want to experience it sometime in the coming year. ARMS. It held me for a few hours of gameplay, but it really didn't have enough content to hold me in. The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth. It's hard to count this one as it's just an expansion to a game that came out last year, and once again it only held me for a few hours before I got turned off from it. Mario & Rabbids. I thought it'd be a good introduction to the hardcore strategy genre, and while it was still pretty difficult for my tastes.